I will be forever the myth.
You're the king of kings, man.
There's always a pecking order. The little packers never mess with the big packers. So I'm a rooster, and he's a chicken, so to speak.
Well, let's talk about the pros that year, Jared. There was a lot of pro shows. One of the best pro shows was the Arnold Classic, which I want to talk about in a minute. But before that, they had the IronMan. So this was only the fourth year of the IronMan, the Pro IronMan, which started in 1990. And this was really notable because Flex Wheeler, this was Flex's first pro show. And after Flex won the USA the year before, in 1992, he looked so unbelievable. He looked like a pro already. He looked like he could place top 5 in the Olympia. So everybody was looking forward to seeing him compete as a pro. But man, when he was really, this was 30 years ago we're talking about. That was one of the best pro debuts I think I've ever seen in my life.
Yeah, and I think I might have told you the year before in the USA, I interviewed him, and I remember him saying to me that I said, I complimented, I said, Flex, I said, you have incredible potential. I said, I could see you winning the Olympia several times.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think so. I said, why do you say that? He says, Jerry, I look at these other guys. I can never get like them. And I said, Flex, you're already like 90% there. What are you talking about?
Yeah.
He was like really like different. I mean, he just didn't realize how good he was.
Yeah.
But, the rest, as I say again, is history. That back he had was just, phew. Wow.
Yeah, he had a long pro career, but I really think my favorite look on him was that year in 93 when he first turned pro.
He had a pro physique at that show.
Oh, yeah. I don't think he weighed much. I think he was like, what, 214, 216, He
was much smaller than he got a couple of years later, but
yeah,
still had the muscle shape, and he had that incomparable back. He had muscle everywhere.
Yeah, just the quality of his physique. He had such the striations and the separation in each muscle group. It was just incredible body, man. Unbelievable.
Yeah, you see, Flex is an example of what I've spoken to you in the past about. He was a very skinny guy. He was skinny as a rail when he started. Like a skeletal guy.
Yeah,
skinny.
I remember seeing pictures, yeah.
What he did, because of that, he had very small fat cells. So he had very small joints, small hips, small waist, but he had genetics gave him full muscles to go full joints. Now, that's like an unbeatable combination if you think about it. Having small joints, small waist, and full muscles. All you got to do is fill out the muscles and that's world champion physique.
Yeah.
And that's what he did.
Yeah.
Because he kept his small hips. He had all the advantages, the structural, aesthetic advantages. All he had to do was fill it out. And that's what he did. And I find that's the case with a lot of elite champion bodybuilders. They already have the structure. They have the smaller and fewer fat cells. It's easier for them to get shredded up,
Yeah.
All they do is build up. They build up, so they,
And it wasn't like it happened for him overnight, because I remember he was in like the 89 nationals, and I think he got third, and then 90 and 91, and then finally in 92. So it took him like 4 or 5 years of training. And like you said, he was very skinny.
Right.
It was amazing that he was able to build up that much muscle that he had,
Well, it is amazing. But when you have the full muscle bellies, that means you have more muscle fibers. So that's why, black guys with high calves, the reason why they can't get the gigantic calves is they just don't have the muscle fibers. So no matter what they do, they can get pretty good calves, don't get me wrong, but they'll never get these freakish calves like Mike Matarazzo had.
Yeah.
One exception being Chris Dickerson, who he had completely genetic calves. That was a different story, but most it has to do with the number. The more muscle fibers you're born with, the greater the potential for muscle size. And so Flex, you can tell because you have the full muscle bellies, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Flex basically was just, it was just dormant, waiting to grow. it's like starting with a small plant where you water it every day, it gets big.
Right.
That was Flex Wheeler. That's all he did.
So do you think that's what it was, Jerry, that he just had a lot of muscle fibers that he
Yes.
was born with, and then he had the small joints on top of it, and he had the low fat cells because he was so skinny?
Well, Flex himself added another dimension because he claims, he didn't tell this to me, but he claims that he was missing one gene for a protein called myostatin.
That's what I was going to ask you about next.
Myostatin is a protein produced in muscle that functions to prevent muscle growth, right? So anything that's going to inhibit or block myostatin is going to cause muscle growth, right? And that's why they have myostatin blockers. They're not made for bodybuilders. They're made to treat muscle diseases like muscular dystrophy. But, if a bodybuilder takes it, a true myostatin blocker, no matter what your status, whether you're an amateur or whatever, you're going to get muscle growth, right? I mean, you look at the cattle and these animals that were born without genes for myostatin, they're gigantic.
Yeah.
They're 2 to 3 times bigger than other animals. And they have low body fat too. They're shredded. They actually have muscle definition.
Yeah, yeah.
So Flex says that he was born with lacking one, because there's like 2 genes for myostatin. He said he was born lacking one of them. Now, looking at him, I would tend to believe him, but I haven't really seen any medical tests to prove that.
How does he know that? Did he get tested for it?
Tested for it, yeah. But the guy supposedly tested him, as far I could be wrong about this, was that same guy who had the Balco, the Balco scandal.
Oh, Victor Conte?
I think that's the one who either tested him or had him test.
Yeah.
A little skeptical because Conte's a kind of a con man.
Right, yeah.
So anything coming from him, I'd be a little skeptical about,
Well, he is a freak, though. I mean, I don't know if he's missing that myostatin, but just, looking at the pictures of when he came from, I didn't know if it was just that he had his incredible genetics or he really responded, like we've seen guys like Kevin Levrone. I guess you could even say Arnold, they're high responders to the drugs. And when they go on the drugs, they just blow up,
But I often wonder, and I've written this in my articles, how many of these top elite bodybuilders, are either, I don't know if they're completely lacking genes. If they were completely lacking genes of myostatin, they would be muscular all their lives, even before.
And he wasn't.
Like most of them, like I say, start out as thin. So that's not indicative of lacking myostatin genes.
Right.
However, if you lack one gene for myostatin, it does give you a head start where you'll be a lot more responsive to forget the steroids. You'll be a lot more responsive to bodybuilding training and nutrition. You're much more responsive than somebody not lacking a myostatin gene.
But would they stay big, like even after they stopped doing the drugs and stopped training?
They would shrink down, but not necessarily they'd only get skinny again if they purposely wanted to. In other words, if for some reason, like I ran into there was a guy years ago named Bill McArdle, who was a famous guy from Vince's gym.
Yeah, I remember him. Yeah.
Very good looking guy from the early 60s. Nice guy. I used to see him in the magazine. He had this huge chest, really impressive body. But I ran into him when I first in early, this was Jesus, like the late 60s, early 70s, something like that. And I looked at him and he was skinny as a rail. He had no muscle. I said, Bill, what happened? I mean, did you quit training? He says, not only did I quit training, but he says, I purposely sought to lose all my muscle. I said, what did you do? He says, I almost practically stopped eating and I fasted like weeks at a time. And he never really explained why he wanted to lose everything, but he did. Now, he wasn't one of those I don't think he was one of those myostatin guys, but to answer your question, if you're lacking the one gene for myostatin, if you don't train and you completely lay off, I don't think you'll ever really get skinny. You'll still have a little bit, let's say, call it an athletic physique.
Yeah.
You're not a champion bodybuilder physique, but I don't think you'd ever get skinny as long as you have the, because the myostatin, again, it kind of keeps the muscles up a little bit.
Yeah. So that year in '93, I mean, we always they always say the '90s were probably the best generation of bodybuilders. I mean, that some people like the 70s, some people like the 80s. But they said the 90s just had such talent. So you not only had Dorian Yates, but then you had all these new guys coming in all at once. You had Paul Dillette, you had Flex Wheeler, you had Kevin Levrone came in like a year before Flex did. Then you had Chris Cormier, who just got his pro card that year too. It was like all at once. You had all this talent. Then you had Sean Ray coming in still from the 90s or the late 80s. And you still had Lee Labrada. You still had Vince Taylor. They were still all competing. But these new guys coming in were freaks, you know, like Flex Wheeler. And then you had Paul Dillette. Both of those guys made their debuts at this Ironman show. And so Lee Labrada ended up in second. Lee was in fantastic shape. And he was just coming off of his third place third place finish at the 92 Olympia. And then Vince Taylor was in third. You had Paul Dillette, who was just absolutely amazing. He looked, you know, he was a freak. He was in fourth. And JJ Marsh, who won this show in 91, he dropped down to fifth. So, I mean, it was just, I'll never forget, there was a Muscle Mag covered, I think it was the Arnold, which take place like a week after this or 2 weeks after this. And so you had the same guys going in it. And poor Mike Ashley, who won the Arnold in 1990 and took second to Sean Ray at the Ironman in 1990. So this is only 3 years ago. There was a picture of like Flex and Dillette and I think Lee Labrada on stage, like doing the comparisons. And poor Mike is behind, you know, they had the other guys behind. And the look on his face was like, what the hell happened in 3 years? You know, who are these freaks, you know? So Mike ended up taking ninth at this Ironman. I mean, he was gone. He was done, you know?
You know, it's funny because I don't know if you agree with this, but I look at some of the names you just mentioned, and I think some of these guys, if they were competing today in that kind of, would still be winning or
I do too.
Five.
Yeah.
Kevin Levrone called me after he made that, you know, comeback in the Olympia. He was over, what, 52, 53 years old.
Yeah.
In the course of the conversation, he said to me, he said, Jerry, what the hell are these guys doing? He says, they're monsters. He says, I don't think I could ever compete even when I said, whoa, stop right there, Kevin. I said, if you're trying to say that these guys would make you look bad when you were at your best,
yeah,
I think the best. And I'm telling you, you would still beat these guys.
Yeah.
Competing at their age. I don't remember who won the Olympia that year. I said, you would have beaten him easily.
Phil Heath.
Yeah, I said, I think you had a better physique, much more, the arms and shoulders, everything, the tricep. These guys can't compare with you. They're puffy looking. I said, you know, yeah, they're big, they're freaky, true. But you had the hardness, you didn't have the bloat. I said, I still think you would have won. I really believe that. So when you that statement about how a lot of people believe that the bodybuilder of the 90s were like that the really golden age of let's say recent bodybuilding. Since I was there, I have to agree. I mean, there was, like you say, there was so many great bodybuilders. I mean, just so many of them.
Yeah.
Today, so I'm not saying the guys today aren't great, but they had. I mean, it was just almost hard to judge a contest.
I think the reason they say that, all the fans say that the 90s were the best, because not only were they bigger than ever, but they also had, like you said, they had the hardness, you know.
You know, that bloat came in right after that.
After that, yeah, in the 2000s.
Getting this bloated look. And then worst of all, you started getting the bloated belly look.
Yeah.
I saw that in the 90s. Nobody had a bloated belly. What's his name? And towards the end of his reign,
Dorian
had a little bit of a bloat, you know,
Yeah.
which I think in interviews he claims it was because of insulin.
Mm-hmm.
Very possible. But the point is, most of the guys were in very hard shape. I think Sean Ray has said this. The conditioning was so much better back then. I mean, you see it. I mean, today you have some guys that are in very, very good shape, and the rest of the lineup is either mediocre or it looks like they have 3 weeks to go for a contest.
Yeah, yeah.
Like they're ready for the contest. They still have subcutaneous water retention and maybe a little fat under the skin. You know, you didn't see that years ago. All the guys were in top shape. They all were peaked.
Yeah.
That's how I know. I saw it. I know this is true.
So comparing the 90s to the 80s, what was the main difference? You think it was the synthetic growth hormone that became more available?
Yeah, I think it was growth.
I do too. Yeah.
Growth hormone entered it, and then towards the mid 90s, you had insulin,
Yeah.
and which you could go either way. You could say, well, insulin gave them the bellies and produced the bloated look, but if you combine insulin with growth hormone and steroids, there's something about that triumvirate of drugs, and I've written this many times. It produces that gigantic freak look.
Yeah.
Guy's 5'10", walking on stage, weighing 297 pounds.
Yeah. Yeah.
Guy on the street who's 5'10" and weighed 297, who didn't train, he'd be fat as a house.
Yeah.
He would be bouncing down the street. And these guys were muscular with abs.
Right. Right.
Yeah, so I to answer your question, direct. I think the growth hormone is what started off the different.
Yeah, if you compare the bodybuilders in the Olympia from the 80s to the 90s, man, it's a gigantic jump up in size.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Also, not only that, but they started. Not only did they start with the growth hormone and then the insulin, let's say the early 90s, early to mid 90s, but they also, a lot of people overlook this, they upped their doses of steroids.
Oh, okay.
Guys started using a lot of, like, let's say, trenbolone, and some of these, they started taking a lot of it. Like,
Was trenbolone around back then in the 90s?
around. In fact, it was actually much more easily obtainable back then.
Okay.
It was actually legally made by a drug company. Was it Parabolin? It might have been called Parabolin.
Yeah, I think it was. Yeah, I heard that too.
Discontinued, and then it went, and then it became like a Fitajet, like an animal steroid that came in pellets, and you had to melt them down and put an injection.
Oh,
then, yeah, I know, believe it or not. And then they started selling, the underground steroid side started selling straight trenbolone. But trenbolone went into become much greater use in the 90s, and even Dorian commented in a recent video I saw. He said, I can't believe, he admitted using trenbolone. He used 76 milligrams twice a week. That's what he says. He says, I hear of guys using 400 or 500 milligrams. He says, that's insane. He says, that's completely crazy. These guys have no idea what they're going to do to themselves. I'm going to do an article about this in my Applied Medical. Trenbolone is the single most dangerous steroid.
You told me that a couple of years ago, I think.
Very, very dangerous steroid for a number of reasons. But this is the flip side. I don't like to say this, but I have to admit it. For growth and strength and muscle size, there's no steroid that comes close. It gives you this gigantic muscle look.
Wow.
So the heavier use of more steroids and more trenbolone, that also accounts for the change over in look at bodybuilders.
Wow.
Well, you can even say the same for the women. I mean, when they started these new divisions, John, I mean, bikini and what's the other one? Figure, I mean, the women were athletic looking. I mean, they had low body fat, but they weren't that muscular.
No.
But as time progressed, suddenly they started getting bigger. I'm not massive like the female bodybuilders, but they started getting like muscle definition that you didn't see earlier.
Yeah, yeah.
They were looking more like bodybuilders than figure, and and now what accounts for it? It wasn't steroids; it was the use of other drugs, clenbuterol and thyroid. They started working with these coaches who put them on drugs to help them lean out. They wanted to get as lean as possible to win. So, but as a side effect, because their body fat was getting so low, they were getting this like muscle definition that didn't exist in the first 2 or 3 years of the shows.
Right.
Yeah,
I believe that because if you go on YouTube, you can watch Mr. Olympia contests from, the last 10 years or so. And I was watching some from I think it was 5 years ago. I couldn't believe the difference in the bikini girls.
Right. See what I'm saying? Yeah.
They were just thinner, lean, thin, girls. They didn't have much muscle at all. And this is just 5 years ago. I couldn't believe how much more muscle they have now.
I mean, they look like girls you could see on the beach. Literally.
Yeah.
But now they're kind of halfway to being bodybuilders.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Because of these coaches that they're working with.
That was in 5 years, dear.
Yeah. And some of the coaches, from what I understand, I can't confirm this is secondhand information, actually put some of the girls on low dose anabolic steroids.
Yeah, I heard that too. Yeah.
That's androgenic, Anavar, Winstrol. that now you're heading into a dangerous territory.
Yeah.
When it comes to steroids, with women, it's completely different than men. Even as soon as you take even one Anavar tablet, you're already taking much more testosterone than a woman ever makes in her body.
Yeah.
Now, if lucky, nothing will happen. You know what I mean? It might even help her lean out. I admit it might even help her lean out a little bit. But if she continues to do this, let's say she has a continual career as a competitor, sooner or later, she's going to start to get the same characteristics that the female bodybuilders get, who are much higher doses of steroids. What I'm talking about is the deeper voice, the breasts will disappear. They're going to get like male type of bone structure in their face, large sexual organs. All that's permanent. That's the danger. And a lot of these girls, I don't think they want that stuff.
No.
Hair growth, they might start getting hair on their faces.
And this is even from low doses of steroids?
Yeah, if they keep taking it, yeah. If they talking, this should take a while. If they, let's say they 2-3 years, they're going to start seeing these side effects. And if they have the genetics, if let's say their father or grandfather had male power baldness, they will actually start to lose their hair starting in the back of the head. I've seen this.
I've seen that too.
I've seen this on female bodybuilders where they have, just like me, I have a little bald spot in the back. They have a bald spot in the back.
Wow.
I'm making fun of them. I'm not trying to say
No.
But in other words, I know what it's from. It's from the steroids.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. So let's go back to the Ironman. Lee Labrada did really good taking second in that. But first of all, I want to talk about Flex Wheeler a little bit too. His posing routine also was really fantastic because he did the splits.
That was
Yeah.
every time he did. I've been in a couple of shows where he did that. I mean, he's doing the pose suddenly, and he used to do it. You remember he did it? He did it slow.
You come down, yeah.
Right down into a split, like some people.
Yeah.
And then berserk as he's doing it, and he would do it like a double on bicep while he's going into the split.
Yeah.
Absolutely berserk for a number of reasons. Because first of all, not only did they not expect it, but we even after all these years, you still have a lot of people, even some people who are in bodybuilding, somehow think that bodybuilders are all inflexible and stiff. And to comb their hair, they got to kind of go like this. But you get a guy like Flex, or even before that, Charles Glass, who was these guys have super flexibility.
Yeah.
They completely blow out of the water the myth that bodybuilders are all stiff and inflexible. Some bodybuilders are, but that's a whole different story. In other words, there's nothing about bodybuilding training that would make you stiff and inflexible.
Yeah.
Yeah,
but we're talking like 30 years ago. He was just such a force coming onto the pro scene. Not only did he have this incredible physique with the small waist, the small joints, the massive muscle bellies, and he's super ripped and hard, and he can do this posing routine that no one else can match. No one else is going to be doing the splits. This guy, I remember when it happened in 93, people were blown away then. And even now, when you look back, you're still blown away when you see how great Flex was, Some
of the videos on YouTube of Flex's routines, I was there and saw him in person.
Yeah.
But there's one thing I'll say about Flex, which is kind of interesting. Remember earlier how I said when I first interviewed him around 90, 91, he was a little bit shy and he wasn't really super confident. I noticed at all the subsequent contests, as he began winning, his attitude changed.
Oh, yeah. He got a little arrogant for a while.
You could actually see it in his posing.
Yeah.
Where a whole different attitude, where almost like the Arnold attitude, like, I already won it. Everybody can go home.
Yeah.
And peaked the year that, what year was it, 99, when he lost to Coleman?
Yeah.
When he got really pissed off.
Yeah, 99.
He went like this,
Mm-hmm.
This was complete 360 degrees away from the Flex Wheeler that I met in 91, who would not have acted like that. You know what I mean? But I'm not trying to put Flex down, but I'm saying that it's really a question of how his confidence grew to the point where he had total confidence in himself, and he almost had that Arnold attitude of, I've already won.
Yeah.
this is a ripoff. This guy couldn't have beat me.
Well, you could see how he could get like that because he was so overwhelmingly unbelievable. I mean, everybody had to be telling him, "Oh my God, dude, you're unreal, you're unreal." And then when you get enough people telling you that, you start to believe it.
Into it. Everyone was saying he was the greatest bodybuilder ever.
Yeah.
And yes, when people are telling you that, it's going to affect you.
Yeah.
You hear enough, and you're going to believe it and say, no, this Coleman can't beat me. No way.
Right.
That explained his behavior. I mean, immediately after the contest, I was there. I mean, Flex told me that he shouldn't have done that. He felt bad about it, and he was very close. He said to me, it could have gone either way. That's the way he expressed it.
Yeah.
Which I agree with.
So Lee Labrada, as I mentioned, he was coming off of he took third place at the Olympia when Dorian won in '92. So he pretty much had the same physique at this show that he did at the Olympia. He was bigger than he had been in previous years, and he had a great routine. So it was for him to play second over Vince Taylor and Paul Dillette, I thought was at what was he, 190 pounds, maybe at the most, 185 pounds. I mean, that was a big victory for him in a way.
The thing about Lee Labrada is that, first of all, I never, ever, I've seen him in many contests, especially as a pro, I've never seen him out of shape.
No.
I've never seen him off in any way. Like sometimes, like for example, you have the Olympia, then you had this Grand Prix circuit after several contests in the weeks that followed the Olympia. A lot of the guys would lose their peak. You know what I mean? In other words, they were in peak shape for the Olympia, but by the third contest, maybe the diet was working or the traveling was getting to them. They start to show a little water retention, a little smoothness. They still look great, don't get me wrong, but they weren't at their peak. Not Lee Labrada. Lee Labrada somehow stayed peak shape no matter how many contests he entered. And his posing, again, was so incredible. I mean, it was like watching Lee Labrada. I think I said this in a previous interview with you.
Oh, yeah.
His posing was so entertaining that even somebody who had no interest in bodybuilding would this guy saying, wow, this guy's almost like a ballet.
Yeah.
The way flowing into those poses, And the plain fact of the matter is, and again, I've said this a million times, and this, I've said this to you, Lee Labrada, when they use the expression uncrowned Mr. Olympia, Lee Labrada is truly an uncrowned because he won the 1990 Mr. Olympia I saw the score sheet.
Right.
He beat Lee Haney, but they gave Lee Haney the contest that night.
Yeah.
So, and Lee Labrada is an extremely intelligent guy, so he knows what he's doing.
I've watched some of his routines over the last year on YouTube, some of those old ones from the late 80s and stuff. He would pose to like 2 or sometimes 3 full songs, like nonstop, incredible posing, and he wasn't even out of breath when he was done. That guy was amazing, man. Just
he was great. He was fantastic.
Incredible poser.
One of the best. And who's that? So bad. The guy from Egypt, the short guy who
Mohammed Makoué.
Also in that league was very good. Almost similar posing demonstration.
But Makoué, I always noticed, would just pose the one song. LeBron would pose like 2 full songs. It was incredible.
Makoué only did one song. Lee was to do that.
Yeah.
I'm sure he practiced that posing in his sleep. He could do it, over and over again.
Oh yeah. And it was, man, he's amazing. I wish more bodybuilders would learn from him,
Well, they should learn the one thing they can learn from him is the fact that how he was able to peak for every contest.
Yeah.
Never showed up out of shape. Never.
Yeah.
Never. I don't know whether it was a genetic thing with him or whether he manipulated his diet or water or whatever. But somehow, like I say, he's one of the few bodybuilders I can think of who always was in peak shape, never was not in peak shape, ever.
Yeah. And then Vince Taylor taking third. I think Vince at one point, after he took third in the 91 Olympia, and then he won the Arnold the next year in 92. This is like 1 year later. I think he had to be feeling like with guys like Flex Wheeler and Paul Dillette, he's like, man, my time is over,
You know the story about Vince I told you when I met him in Germany? Remember that?
Yeah.
I think I was with Julian Schmidt. We were covering some contests. It was actually a Grand Prix show, and he was living in Germany. He came up to me and he said he was got into bodybuilding. John Brown got him into bodybuilding.
Yeah.
And he was in clothes. I mean, I could see he was an athletic guy, but I didn't know what kind of shape he was in. And he said to me, I'd like to start. I'm going to come back to the United States and compete, but I don't think I could really do much. I don't think I could never compete against these pro bodybuilders. Like, he was at the contest the night before, so he saw him. And he happened to have some photos with him. He had a little envelope that 8x10, he had like 3 8x10s. It's the photos of him. I look at it, I said, and Julie, both of our mouth dropped when we saw the. I said, are you shitting me or what? I said, you don't think you have the goods to make? I said, look at these photos. I said, look at your calves, your arms. Are you kidding me? I said, you will be one of the top pros once you get into this.
Yeah.
So I said, yeah. And I reminded him of that conversation a couple of years later when he had won. He was a famous pro, and he laughed. He said, "Yeah, I remember that." I mean, the guy. I don't know why these guys don't have more confidence in themselves.
Yeah. But like you said, once they start winning, then they get it real quick.
And the whole thing changes.
Right.
A couple of wins, and
And then, what'd you think about Paul Dillette at the show? This was the first pro show for him, and he was such a monster, and he took 4th place.
Always, Paul. I used to hang out with Paul at the contest, so, he'd call me to his hotel room, like right before the show, and do a couple of poses. And I've always been amazed. I mean, the guy was, I can't even put into words how thick and big this guy was.
Yeah.
I've seen a lot of bodybuilders over the years, really big guy, Arnold, Sergio, all these guys. And I don't think I've ever seen anyone as thick as even the current guys.
And the structure with the width, and man.
Waist, and he had these huge calves. I mean, the only thing Paul lacked was his back.
Yeah.
His shoulders were immense, giant deltoids. But the problem was he had a wide back, but he didn't have the muscle definition. See, in other words, I always use an expression in the Bible: the Lord giveth, the Lord taketh away. I wrote an article about Chris years ago. I pointed out how he had this tremendous lower body cast, but his kind of upper body and his arms would never really legs. I said, it's almost like, he was gifted in some areas and not in others. With Paul, he had the body, but except for some reason, he could never get his back musculature out. And to add to the problem, he didn't know how to pose it.
Yeah.
He could have done what Larry Scott, some of these other guys did, whereas he could have hidden the back. Because his arms and shoulders and chest and torso, from the front, like I said, he was unbeatable. If I were him, I would have minimized the back stuff. You know what I mean? And you have to do the mandatory back poses. He would just have to learn how to stand where he could kind of throw his lats out. We really wouldn't notice the lack of, let's say, upper back musculature. And, and the problem was the lat spread was a little bit of a problem. He had no control in that pose.
Yeah. He seemed like he was so big, he couldn't really control his body. He couldn't pose well at all.
For some reason, Paul could never do the lat spread right. And even though he had, if you really looked at his lats in person, he had wide lats.
Oh, yeah.
He did that. They stayed crunched in.
Yeah. He had no control over it. No control over his back.
So it made his back look small. And that, more than anything else, is, I think, what cost him why he, placed low. He always made the top, because of the sheer size, he'd make like the top 5 or 6, but he very rarely won because of that back. It was the back that helped.
Do you think that's why Labrada and Taylor beat him at this show?
Yeah, I think so.
Because of his back, yeah.
The back, exactly. Because Paul, Jesus, his arm was bigger than Labrada's whole body.
Oh, I know. It's so wild. Like, if you didn't know anything about bodybuilding, you saw that, you'd be like, how the hell did that guy lose?
But it scares me to think of what would happen if Paul had a back like Flex Wheeler.
Yeah.
Geez, oh my God. He would have been absolutely and just a little bit more cut,
Yeah.
a little bit more cut than he was with a back like Wheeler. He could have won the Olympia if he could maintain that shape. he would have won it 15 times. Seriously.
He just always looked uncoordinated when he posed. Like I couldn't imagine him doing like a 3/4 back or like kneeling poses or lunging poses. I could never see him doing that, you know?
He couldn't master the posing.
No. Mm-mm.
Berto Fox in that sense. And
Yeah.
he did certain poses really well.
Yeah.
Like the but when it came, like I say, to double arm, he'd go like this.
Mm-hmm.
He'd make him look small by bringing his elbows all the way in.
Yeah.
No idea how to pose his back either. He did great side shots and kneeling shot, but again, certain poses he just couldn't do right.
Yeah.
But Paul, it really held him back.
And then you look at someone like Arnold, who was a big guy, and he could move so gracefully and do all those twisting shots and do them perfectly, you know, like precision perfect, you know.
Yeah, Arnold, he held the poses right, like when he do that famous twisting back shot.
Yeah,
like that,
it was perfect.
all the way over, you know what I mean?
Arm was completely straight. Yeah.
I mean, Arnold's back wasn't that bad, but I mean, in that pose, you'd see those giant delts and arms, and look at his back. It was the same, principle as I mentioned earlier.
Yeah.
So he tried to teach Berto Fox how to pose once. It just didn't work.
Right.
So for 2 hours, it didn't help. Didn't help.
So at the Arnold Classic, now this was only the fourth or fifth Arnold Classic because it started in '89. So it was the fifth one. I remember it was on TV. It was a big deal. The Arnold Classics back then were really something special, you know. And so it was pretty much the same placings. Flex won, Lee Labrada second again, Vince Taylor third again, Paul Dillette fourth, JJ Marsh was fifth, and then Mike Matarazzo was sixth place. So he was the guy who wasn't at the Ironman. Now Matarazzo, I don't remember that. He was in incredible shape that year. He was shredded.
I don't know if that was the year, but there was one year, it was at the Arnold show, and they had a hotel. It was held at a veterans auditorium or
Memorial Auditorium, yeah.
Columbus, and the hotel wasn't that far away, but it used to get really cold, in Columbus.
Yeah.
They had like a shuttle bus that would take you from the hotel to the contest venue. And I remember on the way to one of the pre-judging at the Arnold show, I got on the bus and there was only one other guy on the bus, Mike Matarazzo.
Yeah.
I knew Mike. We got along great because we were both from back east. I was pretty good friends with the guy. And I remember saying, "Hey, Mike, how do you feel? You ready for the show?" It might have been that year.
It was, I think, yeah.
And I said to him, how do you feel? And he looked at me, he said, "Jerry," he says, I feel like shit. He says, "I feel like I can fall on the floor and die right now."
Yeah.
What's wrong? He says, I don't know. He says, I took some diuretics. I think it screwed me up. I don't know what happened. Later on, I found out what happened was that Mike took a potassium-sparing diuretic, aldactone, it's called, but he'd also take a large amount of potassium with it. And when you take those particular diuretics, if you take large amounts of potassium, you get what they call hyperkalemia, excessive potassium. It can cause all kinds of, anywhere from heart rhythm disturbances to the muscles feel stiff as a board, and you feel terrible. And that's what Mike had access. He didn't know that you're not supposed to take.
Went to the hospital, right? After it was.
That's right. That's how bad it was.
Yeah.
Go to the hospital.
I remember after that happened, he did an interview somewhere. I don't think I got this from him in person. I think he did an interview with somebody, maybe in a magazine. And he did a seminar right after that. And he was warning everybody in the seminar about what he went through,
right.
And how he almost died.
Yeah. Did he mention about the potassium spring? Probably did.
Yeah.
Did he mention it?
I think so, yeah.
Yeah, because that's what caused the problem.
So then he said after the seminar, these three younger bodybuilders came up to him and they wanted to know exactly what he did to get ready for the show because they said he looked great. He goes, "Did you guys not hear me? I almost died." It's like they didn't even care. They just wanted to get ripped like he was,
Yeah, that's like the time I did the seminar in Louisiana with Robbie Robert and Samir Banu. And I told them, before the seminar, I said, "Listen, guys, let me handle all the steroid questions because I know you guys don't want to talk about that." And
yeah.
I just get embarrassed. And so sure enough, when we opened up the audience to questioning, the first one was from a woman. And I had just done 20 minutes of how bad steroids are for women, right? And her question was, I'm getting ready for a contest. What's the best steroids to take? I'll never forget this. Samir and Robbie, we all looked at each other like in disbelief. And I turned to the woman. I said, didn't you just hear what I just said? Because yes, I'm willing to take the risk.
Yeah, no, they don't care. They just want the result, right?
So I said to her, try Anavar and Winstrol.
Yeah.
You know.
One other thing I want to mention about that Arnold Classic was when I saw it on TV and Lee Labrada was out posing, they had the camera backstage and it showed his wife with her son, who's Hunter.
Oh, Hunter, yeah.
And now he's competing. I don't know how old he was, like 5 years old, I think, or something. He might have been younger. I think she was holding him.
Oh yeah, yeah. He's a little.
Yeah, and he was watching his dad pose. That was pretty wild.
Oh, was he? Must have been a baby, right?
Yeah, I think he was. I'll have to look at the videotape again, but I think she was holding him in her arms.
Wow. And
Yeah.
little, he'd be up on the stage one
I
day.
know, right? Yeah.
I was kind of surprised when I first, realized that his son had become a bodybuilder.
Yeah, and he's so big now.
Yeah, and he's so big,
Yeah.
I mean, he must have, Lee has a brother who's also a bodybuilder too, and a trainer.
Gene, right?
Yeah, he's a subscriber to my Applied Metabolics, but I mean, and of course the sister was married to Samir Benoot at one time.
Yeah, yeah,
Big thing of bodybuilding in that family.
yeah, yeah. Great genetics.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah, I talked to Lee's training partner, Stony Lee Grimes. I interviewed him last week.
Oh, he's an old friend of mine. Yeah.
I mean, last year, not last week, but yeah.
Remember when he competed in bodybuilding, I interviewed him a couple of times from Texas, right? A nice
Yeah.
guy.
Mm-hmm.
Very nice, very personable guy, very nice guy.
But he was talking about Lee's genetics. He goes, this guy just responded so well to training and diet. He was always lean. He said he never really was out of shape,
Out of shape. And you look at him today in his early or mid 60s, something like that.
He'll be 64 because he was born in 1960.
Okay. And sometimes he puts little shots of him
Yeah.
on the media, and the guy still looks fantastic.
Unbelievable. Yeah.
4 years old.
He's still got big arms.
Hey, he did a tricep shot that amazed me.
I know.
I mean, it looked like his tricep did 30 years ago.
I know. He's still vascular and ripped.
Yeah, I mean, he's a testament to his own training.
Yeah. Yeah. He's amazing.
And look what he did for his son. I mean, I'm sure he helped him. I mean, all right, Hunter has a different type of body, but
Yeah.
I mean, the fact that he was able to achieve the pro status he did is another testimony to Lee's knowledge about how to train and diet.
Yeah. Yeah.
I know somebody's going to chime in and say, "Yeah, what about the steroid?" I don't even want to get into that part, but it takes more than steroids to get that kind of physique.
Yeah.
We both know.
There was another show too. Now, the Arnold, I think, was always the first weekend in March. So there was another show that I forgot about called the French Pro Invitational that was in Paris, France, and Flex won in that too. So he won 3 shows in a row. He won the Ironman, the Arnold. Well, see, Arnold had to pay like $100,000, right? I'm sure. And then this one just was like a smaller pro show, but he won that too. It was in Paris, France. And Vince Taylor was in it. He got second. Nasser went in it and got third. And then Ronnie Coleman, who, as we mentioned, he was much smaller back then, but he was in 4th place. And Akam Albrecht was in 5th place.
Yes. Yeah. I remember him.
So that was kind of a show I kind of forgot about, but
I didn't even remember it until you just mentioned it.
yeah, I forgot about it too. They said Ronnie was 240 pounds.
He was already getting big. Wow.
Yeah, it was already starting to get big. Yeah. Then there was another one in San Jose, California. And let me see what the date was on this. Oh, March 13th. So this was the week before the one in Paris, France. So Vince Taylor won this one. So this had to be the week after the Arnold. So Vince won that, and JJ Marsh was second. Flavio Baccanini, the little Italian guy, he was in 3rd. Akam Albrecht was 4th. Ray McNeil, rest in peace, who died probably a couple years later. and he was fifth, and then Mike Ashley was in sixth. So for
Flavio.
some reason, Flex didn't do that one.
You
And
know,
Vince was able to win that one.
kind of funny because Flavio, when he posed, he one of the songs he posed to was "Short People Have by I forgot the name of the guy who recorded that. One of the lines, "Short people have no reason for living," or something like that.
Randy Newman, yeah.
Yeah, you could hear it. And he used to post to that, which was
Danny Padilla used to pose that too, didn't he?
crowd loved it. They cracked up when he had. And there was another song that he posed to, something. It was a guy saying, "Ain't I good looking?" Something like that.
No, I'm too sexy. I'm too sexy for my shirt or something.
That's the one. He used to post to
Yeah.
that. He was a real crowd favorite because
Oh yeah, yeah. He had a great physique too.
like 5'2", but I mean the audience loved him.
Right. All right, let's talk about a couple more shows, Jer, and then we'll call it a day on this one. So Porter Cottrell, who was the light heavyweight winner at the 91 Nationals, the one year that Kevin Leroney won.
Right.
So Porter turned pro in 92. I think he got second to Kevin at the Night of the Champions. And he did pretty good at the Olympia. I think he got, like, he was in the top 10, right? Wasn't he seventh or eighth or something that year when Dorian won? So he came back in 93 and he had a great year. He won 3 shows in a row. He did the Pittsburgh Pro, and he won that over Mike Matarazzo. Let me see who was so Porter was first, Matarazzo was second. So this was after the Arnold. So Matarazzo looks in great shape in this one too. Not quite as shredded or ripped as he was at the Arnold, so he must have learned his lesson about the diuretics.
Right.
And then Milos Skarsev, who was just coming up, really. I mean, he was just starting as a pro. He was in third place.
Right.
So that was kind of a smaller pro show.
Yeah.
But what do you think about Porter Cottrell's physique?
Tremendous physique, top to bottom. Again, he had very muscular, hard shape. There's one interesting story about Porter Cottrell. He was supposed to compete. I think it was in a Night of the Champions show in New York one year. And he was like favored to win. He was in great shape. And he called me to his hotel room and he told me that he was going to have to drop out of the contest. I said, "What's the problem, Porter?" What happened was he was severely constipated.
Mm.
And he felt it was bloating his stomach out. And he didn't want to, he said he didn't want to like compete like that. So he actually dropped out of the show.
Wow.
He was a really super nice guy.
Yeah.
He was a firefighter, I think was it Kentucky or Tennessee, something like that?
Kentucky. Yeah.
Very nice guy. Oh, gee, what a nice guy he was.
And he really wasn't a big guy, but he had a great physique and he was winning a lot of pro shows.
Yeah, a lot of pro. He's had another guy with a complete physique, top to bottom, deep abs,
Small waist.
small waist. Yeah, pretty good poser. Always in peak shape. For a contest.
Yeah.
He dropped out of that contest because, I mean, I looked at him. He looked. I didn't see anything. To me, he still looked great.
Yeah.
But the thing was messing him up. And I guess he felt he was starting to get water retention. I don't remember.
Yeah.
He didn't want to compete unless he was in peak shape.
Yeah. So like I said, 93 this year, he won 3 shows in a row. So he won the one in Pittsburgh. Then he went to Chicago. They had a pro show in Chicago. Now, he was in this the year before when Kevin went in it as well. And I think Porter beat Kevin the year before, 92.
Right.
That was Kevin's first pro show. He was huge, but he was just a little smooth. Porter got second, and I think it was Thierry Pastel got first.
Okay. Terry.
And then at the Night of the Champions, Kevin got more cut, and he won it easy, and Porter got second.
Right.
So Porter came back a year later, and he wins this show now in Chicago. John Sherman was in second place.
Yeah.
So John Sherman this was his pro debut, I think, because he had won the Nationals the year before. He won the Nationals the same year that Flex won the USA. And John Sherman was a shorter guy, light heavyweight, but another one with great physique, right? Real small waist.
Call him the Sherman Tank.
Yeah, right.
Thick and he was a nice guy.
So even though this was the 90s, Jerry, this was, I guess, right before the guys got really, really big, you know.
Yeah. But
Because you got guys like Porter Cottrell and John Sherman who were light heavyweights when they were amateurs, and they're taking first and second at these pro shows. Yeah, so Porter was first, John Sherman second, Milos again was third. And back then, if you placed in the top 3 in one of these pro shows, you would qualify for the Olympia automatically.
Right.
And I noticed Ronnie Coleman was in 6th. So he was still, this was like probably his second year as a pro. Yeah, second year as a pro. And like you said, he was much smaller, but he was building his way up.
Starting his ascent. See, what happened was, I can't say this as a fact, but I think Ronnie really started getting into the steroids as soon as he turned pro.
Yeah, I do too. I agree.
When he told me he was natural as an amateur, I believe him because he was a very naturally muscular guy. But as soon as he turned pro, that's when he started taking the steroids. And it took a while to kind of, develop the right programs to give him the look he wanted. And that, that's why he got bigger and bigger.
And I think, I can't verify this either, but I think he was just taking steroids at first. And then eventually he got into the growth hormone and the insulin. And then that's when he got really big, right?
So too. It's a funny thing about Ronnie, he worked for the Arlington, Texas Police Department. He was still a police officer.
Yeah.
When he first started using the steroids, as he started to get bigger, we like the 240 and up and all that, people started saying, well, you must, you're obviously using steroids. Ronnie used to say was, I can't use steroids because I'm a police officer and we undergo regular drug testing.
Yeah.
So if they caught me with steroids, I'd lose my job. In other words, it was a way of denying using steroids without denying it outright.
Right.
He's saying, because I'm tested as a police officer, I obviously can't be used, but he never denied using steroids.
Right.
Like what I call a politician's answer.
Yeah, right.
Ask them a question and they don't really answer you. You know what I mean? They give you an answer that doesn't really match the question.
Did you ever see when he was on Jay Leno after he was already Mr. Olympia a couple times?
Yeah, I did. I did see that.
Yeah. So he kind of did the same thing there. I mean, Jay Leno didn't ask him about steroids. He wasn't not going to ask those hard questions. But he said, "How'd you get into bodybuilding and stuff?" And he goes, "Well, I really didn't want to get into it." He goes, "This gym owner said, I'll give you a free membership if you go into a contest." But he goes, he asked me if I competed, and I said, "No, man, I don't want anything to do with bodybuilding." He goes, "I know you got a diet and you got to take steroids." He goes, "I don't want any part of that." So he kind of said, "I don't want any part of steroids," and then he just left it there. Jay Leno, of course, didn't follow up with any questions like, "Are you taking them now?" Or
Yeah, kind of left it in the air.
Yeah. All right, let's talk about one more show before we end this episode, and that'll be the Night of the Champions, which at the time was, I would say, probably the 3rd biggest pro show of the year. The Olympia was the biggest, Arnold Classic was a close second, and then the Night of the Champions was probably 3rd, because even though they had a lot of pro shows at that time, I still think the Night of the Champions, because of its reputation, it was going for so long. It started in 1978. Yeah. It was still, and let me see how many people were in it. I remember how many people they used to have in those shows in the Night of the Champions.
In fact, I told Joe Weider that the one contest that I really insist on covering, because he used to send me all the contests, I said was the Night of the Champions because my family lived in New York.
Yeah, and your mom was out there, right?
And it gave me a chance to visit. I said, so, if you want to send somebody else to the Nationals or Pittsburgh or Florida, whatever, I don't care. If you want to send me to, fine. But I really want to cover that shows. And he did it. He let me cover it. I was always covered that. That's the one show.
You remember that one in 93?
Yeah, but if you tell me who was in it, I'll remember it real fast.
So Porter won again. So Porter won 3 pro shows that year. Yeah, Andreas Munzer was second, and from what I read, it was really, really close.
Yep. Yeah. I had already met Munzer when he had entered the Amateur World Championships. I believe it was in Australia. I forget whether it's 89, maybe 89, possibly.
Okay.
Weider sent me to that one. and I met him, and I think he got third. Oh no, wait, no, I think he might have won his class. He didn't win the overall, but he won this class at that World Championship.
Okay.
That's when I met Munzer. So I already knew Munzer. So I think I might have interviewed him at the Night of the Champions too.
I think Munzer was in the '89 Olympia, right? In Rimini? Rimini? Yeah.
I was at that one too.
Did he ever win a pro show?
Let me think. I
I
don't think
he did he?
no, I don't think he did. He might have won if they gave him most muscular, he'd certainly won it.
From what I read in the magazines, they said a lot of people thought he should have won this one because he was, so, he's obviously so shredded. And Porter, I think, had the better shape. But
Yeah.
a lot of people thought that this was kind of a gift for Porter, and Andreas should have won this one.
Well, Porter had a little bit better muscle shape and symmetry than Andreas.
Mm-hmm.
Andreas Munzer was a guy, he's like legendary for his muscularity. They
Yeah.
say one of the most muscular bodybuilders ever, right? But the thing about Munzer is that you had to really appreciate his muscle definition, level of muscle definition. You had to see him in person,
Mm.
right, up close. John, I'm telling you, here's a guy, when no matter even the cut bodybuilders, no, when they're not flaking, they just sit in front of you. You don't see like striations. You
Yeah.
might see vascular, but you don't see actual muscle definition. Munzer was so muscular that just sitting there, I could see cuts all over his arms. I mean, he wasn't even flexing.
Wow, crazy.
Silly muscular. I mean, I asked him, because you hear all these guys lie about their body fat level. Oh, I'm zero. Ronnie Coleman,
Yeah.
he was 0.1% body fat, which happens to be incompatible with life.
Right.
Human skeleton has more fat than that. Come on.
Right.
When he weighed 325 pounds, he was 3% body fat.
Yeah.
I like Ronnie, so I don't know why he said that. Maybe somebody took did the skin calipers and did them wrong. But anyway, the point being, I looked at Munzer, and because the lowest body fat that a man could attain and still be fairly healthy is 3%. Because 3% of body fat in men is called essential fat.
Right.
That keeps your kidneys in place. The fact that nerves. I mean, your body doesn't want to use that fat because you could get in trouble, right?
Right.
I said to myself when I was interviewing Andreas, I looked at him and said, if there's any guy who's close to 3% fat, it's this guy.
Yeah.
I said to him, I had to have it translated. The guy who translated was Albert Busek, Arnold's buddy.
Okay.
As a translator when I interviewed Andreas Munzer. I said through Albert, I said, Andreas, did you ever have your body fat met? And he was a very soft-spoken, quiet guy, Munzer. I said, did you ever have your body fat measured? He said, yes. I said, what is your body fat level? I'm looking at the guy because he has all these straight hair. I said, what is your body fat level, let's say now or for a contest? He told me it was 6%.
Wow.
Now, I mentioned that in many of my articles since then. Whenever body fat levels come up, I always relate that anecdote because all these guys are so full of shit.
Yeah.
At the 3 and
6%. He's way more shredded than most guys who claim they're 5% or 3%. Yeah.
All these guys claiming to be, 2%, 1%. They're not nearly as cut as they're lying. A guy who's 5%, even 7% is shredded.
Yeah.
The average body fat, where you have a guy who has like not muscular defined, but no superficial fat at all, that's 15% body fat. As soon as you start going below 15, you start getting more and more muscular. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
So the average male bodybuilder who's in great shape, whose peak is about 7% body fat.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm talking, he'd be really cut. Even 8%, he'd still look great.
Yeah.
I've seen my good friend Samir has said he was, I think he said either 2 or 3% fat when he won the Olympia. I don't want to call him, he's a good friend of mine. And Samir was extremely, we both know when he won the Olympia, he was the best shape I think I've ever seen him.
Yeah.
I don't think that he was 3% body fat.
No, no.
So Samir probably was about 5 or 6% body fat. You know, he was a little shorter than Andreas. So I'll give him like 5 or 6%. But
the fat percentage goes down as the tail, as he keeps telling the story.
another thing you have to remember about body fat, remember I said the 3% is essential body fat, right?
Yeah.
Now, they did some studies with Navy SEALs years ago, and they got them down to very low body fat. And what they found, remember, these guys are not bodybuilders, but they train very hard. You know, Navy SEALs are doing all kinds of maneuvers all the time. They burn a tremendous amount of calories. So they put these guys on a diet, and they got them down to very low body fat. And they were doing measurements all the time of the extent of any muscle lean mass loss and all that. What they found was when the guys hit 5% body fat, some of them did hit 5%, that's when they started losing significant amounts of muscle.
Yeah, yeah.
They hit 5% body fat, they started to lose muscle. As long as they were over 5%, they were able to retain most of the muscle. But
Yeah.
as soon as they hit 5%, suddenly the muscle started going. And I don't even think steroids would stop that. If you get to, if some guy, my point is, if some guy, a bodybuilder, was able to get to 3% or less body fat, they would not look good. They'd show a lot of muscle loss.
Yeah.
Very flat looking. Their muscles wouldn't look, they would look like shit, to put it bluntly.
Yeah, I believe that because, competing as a natural bodybuilder, I always tried to be big, but at the same time, you got to be ripped, otherwise you won't win the show. And I remember that was like especially even when I was doing photo shoots after I stopped competing as a natural bodybuilder, I know that after you get to a certain body fat percentage, you don't really look much leaner, but you do lose fullness and muscle mass. Your
imagination, it's a real effect.
Right. I could see it. Yeah.
You know what the funny thing is? It tends to vary among individuals.
Yeah.
Some guys might start to lose muscle at as much as 7 or 8% fat.
Yeah.
Depending on what type of diet they use, let's say a ketogenic diet or something, they can wind up losing muscle even at higher percentages of body fat. So, it varies, but almost everybody, every male I'm talking about, when they get to 5%, they're going to start to lose muscle tissue. It makes no difference how many steroids they use.
Yeah. Well, I see it a lot in the natural bodybuilding world because some of these guys get super, super shredded. They're probably at 5%, but they're small. I mean, they don't look healthy,
I saw one study, this is a shocking statistic, where they measured a guy throughout he was a natural bodybuilder. It was like a case study they followed him from the beginning of his contest prep, several months, all the way to the end. He didn't use any drugs, no steroids. He adjusted his diet, varied along the way, and this and that. He lost, John, this is shocking. He got in great shape. I think he even either won or placed high in the contest. But this was blowing me away when I saw it. He lost 67% of his starting muscle.
Oh my God. Wow.
His body fat was very low. This guy actually got to something like 6 or 7% fat as a natural. No drugs, no.
So he lost 67% of his muscle mass or his weight?
I think it was his muscle. I could be his weight, but I know he lost a lot of muscle. I might be off on that exact figure, but he lost a lot of muscle.
Yeah.
A lot of muscle. I mean, his measurement, everything. But he got very cut, but he sacrificed tremendous amounts of muscle.
Yeah. Yeah.
Remember, he's a natural.
Yeah.
But like I say, even if you're taking a boatload of steroids, if you go to 3% fat, you're going to be losing muscle by the day.
Yeah. I think that was one of the problems with natural bodybuilding. I think that's why it never really took off, was because they were looking kind of like the judges were using the same level of conditioning that they saw in the pros that were taking steroids, and they were applying that condition or that standard. They were applying that standard to natural bodybuilders. Well, the only way a natural bodybuilder could get that way is he's got to lose muscle tissue to get the shredded glutes and to get the super shredded look, And then it's not really a good look. It's an emaciated look. you know.
And by the way, in case anybody's curious, the reason why you start to lose muscle when you get to 3% fat, if you are able to do that, is because, as I said earlier, the 3% is essential fat that the body doesn't want to release.
Yeah.
The body senses that you get there. So rather than tap into that fat,
Get rid of muscle.
the most available fuel, muscle tissue.
Yeah.
That you start to lose muscle. So,
Yeah.
That's the reason. And I write in my articles that I always recommend that if a natural bodybuilder is on, let's say, a low carbohydrate diet for most of the time, getting in preparation for a contest, the last, let's say, couple of weeks, maybe even a month before the contest, they should gradually increase their carbohydrate intake. Carbs, and this is true, John, will spare muscle.
Yeah.
Or remember, if you're a natural bodybuilder and you already have low body fat, which most of them would have a month before the show, there's nothing to burn if you keep training. I mean,
Yeah.
you have to lose muscle. So you got to do something that's going to put a brake on the muscle loss. And the way to do that as a natural is to, I'm not saying you should start eating 1,000 grams.
No, yeah, you just gradually increase it. Yeah.
Increase it up to you're not going to hold water. You're going to be using it as energy when you train anyway.
Plus your metabolism is going to be so much faster at that point.
Faster, and it's the best way for a natural body to maintain muscle as the contest draws near. It's essential for a natural bodybuilder.
And if they have a good coach, I think the coach should be able to see that and determine that. Yeah.
If they have a coach or somebody that can look at them and judge them, they could figure out, they could judge how much carbs they need to eat. In other words, if they do look like they're starting to lose muscle a little too fast, you up the carbs a little bit.
Yeah.
Let's say it's a week or two before the show, and maybe they're eating a little bit too many carbs, so they're getting a little bit of water retention from the insulin effect. Then you don't eliminate the carbs, but you back off, and that gets rid of the water.
Yeah.
So, you judge it more or less day by day.
Yeah. How did Andreas Munzer die?
When he went to reported at a hospital, he had severe gastrointestinal problems. So what happened was I think they tried to open him up or something like that.
Yeah.
Or something, and they found all sorts of abnormalities, like his heart and his liver. His liver was gigantic, and his heart and all this. Anyway, when they opened it up, his liver was like frayed paper. He had this thing called ileosis hepatis, which is like large blood-filled cysts that form in the liver. It breaks down the liver. Liver becomes very friable, it falls apart. And his heart was all his internal organs were falling apart. And I guess in this exploratory surgery, he actually died. He went to a cardiac arrest, or he went into shock or something like that. His blood pressure dropped. I mean, the doctors who wrote him up afterwards, they were in shock. They've never seen internal organs like this guy had.
I heard there was a lot of internal bleeding when they opened him up.
A lot of internal bleeding, because remember, those blood-filled cysts in the liver, they blow up, and you get all kinds of blood all over.
Wow.
I mean, he had.
So was that from all the stuff he was doing?
Yeah. I mean, right after he died, you might have remembered this. A German Der Spiegel or something like that.
Yeah.
Published what was supposedly somebody. This is the story. Somebody, a girlfriend, somebody found Andreas's drug regime in his gym bag. And the story was they gave it to this German newspaper who published it. And, I got a hold of it. And when I saw the list, I said, no, this can't be true. I mean, remember I talked about the drugs that what's his name? Yeah. And this what made it look like child's play. He had every drug known to man at that time. Everything. He had drugs I had never even heard of. He was taking like 6 different kinds of diuretics.
Wow.
I mean, it was like a drug regime that somebody would use who wanted to commit suicide.
So his extreme definition of muscularity, do you think that was due to the drugs or genetics or both?
Both.
He
was a naturally, I think he was, there's another guy.
Yeah. He had to be, because nobody else looked like that.
in the interview, he did mention that I always ask that when I interview the guys, I said, how did you look when you started training? Fat, skinny, muscular? Like I said, 99 out of 100 times, it's very skinny, almost
Yeah.
every time. He was one of them. He says, I was very thin. He says, I was inspired by Arnold. He was telling me his story. But yes, the drugs definitely helped. I mean, they said in the autopsy, one of the comments was complete lack of some subcutaneous fat.
Yeah.
About that. He had that's why when I told you, when he was sitting there, I could see striation. He had literally no fat under his skin.
So he had to be doing the stuff all the time.
Yeah, I couldn't tell you. I don't know whether he went off.
Probably.
I asked him about his diet, and I said to him, Andreas, I said, you're so muscular. I mean, do you ever go off your diet? I mean, and he says, yes. He answers, in German. He says, yes, I have this stuff called quartz. It's called quark.
Oh yeah, I've heard of that.
That's what he called going off his diet. I found out later that quark is a type of cheese product, like cottage cheese, popular in Germany and Europe. That's not going off your diet.
Right.
When I said to him, what about pizza and ice cream, that stuff?
Cookies.
Like this, he says, no.
Never. Yeah.
I never have any desire for those foods.
I guess he died like 3 years after this contest.
He was only like, what, how old was he? The early 30s, 32?
Early 30s, yeah.
It's a shame. And he was a really nice guy.
Yeah.
Very quiet, shy guy. And I remember during the interview, I tried to get a little controversy going. I tried to ask about some of the other competitors, like, what do you think of this guy, that guy? What do you think of Labrada? What do you think of... And he only said good things about him. He would not put down anybody.
Yeah.
This guy's great. I admire this guy. And only good thing. He never said a bad thing about anybody. Such a good...
You think he should have won this show?
Probably, yeah.
Yeah.
I think he should have won that show. As great as Porter was, he was just a out of this world muscle definite.
Yeah, that's what I heard. Yeah.
Even though Porter had a little bit more aesthetic looking physique, he was in such ridiculously defined. I would have had, as a judge, if I were judging, I would have had to give it to Andreas for that alone, because it's just, nobody could beat that.
Nobody could compare to that, right?
Andreas also had very good legs, if you remember.
Oh yeah, huge legs. Yeah.
Good back. He had good legs. He had good calves.
Yeah, yeah.
Wasn't quite as aesthetic as Porter, but I mean, they could have gone either way. Let's put it that way. But
yeah,
I would have given Andreas a little bit of an edge. I would have given him the contest.
So John Sherman was third. He was second to Porter at the Chicago show. He dropped down to third here.
Yeah.
And Charles Clairmont from England was fourth.
Clairmont, very nice guy.
Great physique. Yeah.
He won a couple of NABBA Universe titles.
Yeah. Yeah.
But here's a guy that is an interesting situation, because he was a very balanced physique, not the biggest guy, highly defined. In Europe, he was like a king. He would win every contest.
Right.
Goes into the IFBB Pro and becomes an also-ran.
Yeah.
Doesn't do shit.
I know.
I think he might have placed in the top 5 in a couple of pro shows, but he never, as far as I know, he never won a pro show.
Well, I did some research in '93, and it looked like there was 3 Grand Prix. These must have been after the Olympia. And he did win all 3.
Oh, he did. I didn't realize that.
Yeah, one was England, one was Finland, one was France, and he beat Lavroni and he beat Flex.
Oh, okay. I forgot about that. I didn't realize that.
Yeah, it must have been after the Olympia. I'll have to do some more research on that.
Well, I wasn't at those shows. I didn't see them, but I was suspected.
He never really placed super high at the Olympia.
Oh, no, at the big shows he did.
He was always like 6th, 7th,
He placed high, but not in the, not in the top.
Not top 5 or anything, yeah.
I would suspect that he won those Grand Prix shows because, like I said earlier, just like Lee Labrada, he was one of those guys that was able to hold his peak through all the different shows where most of the other guys, for some reason, each show they faded a little bit.
Yeah, yeah.
So you see him on stage, Charles Clairmont, standing next to those guys, he's going to look better than them because he's in peak shape.
Yeah, he just had such great shape, good muscle, great arms, small waist, good legs.
At one of the Night of the Champions, He sat next to me and my mother in the hotel lobby.
Oh, wow.
We were all talking. Yeah, nice guy, very nice guy.
Let's see. Milos was fifth. Matarazzo dropped down to eighth, so he must have been losing his peak. But you know what else I think happened at this show? This was in 93. So the WBF was in 91, 92. So I think you had a bunch of guys coming back to this show who were in the WBF. And pretty much all of them placed pretty low.
That I noticed that. I remember that happening. I remember Aaron Baker was really knocked down to nothing when he
He
came
was
back.
knocked down to 12th.
Yeah, I mean they really punished those guys.
Barry DeMay was 10th.
Yeah,
And Mike Quinn, who must have been out of shape, was out of the money. He wasn't even in the top 16.
yeah,
And so was Tony Pearson.
yeah. You know,
So, yeah, you had a bunch of guys who I think Mike Quinn came back the next year in great shape and he took top 5. I think it was 4th.
Mike Quinn, it's a funny story. Mike Quinn, he was one of the, they gave him all nicknames. I don't know what they called Mike, but
Yeah.
in the WBGA, got the big, money contract. That's how Vince McMahon drew all these guys
Yeah.
over. And they only held their show for 2 years, as
2
you know.
years. Yeah. Hmm.
Second year that Mike competed, Mike Quinn, I was there with my mother, and I said, Mom, why do you want to? She was visiting me. I said, Mom, why do you want to go to a bodybuilding show? She loves shows, Broadway show. Any kind of show, as long as it's she wanted to go.
Loves the theater.
I think it's since they kind of put a theatrical thing going on, the W tried to make it a show.
Yeah.
So I went there with her, Anyway, getting back to Mike Quinn, he walks out at the show, and I was shocked when I saw him. I mean, he literally looked fat. He had no muscle definition at all.
This was the WBF show, right?
Show, yeah, the second one. It was in
Second one, yeah.
terrible. I never saw him look like that. Afterwards, I spoke to him and I said, Mike, what happened at that show? Apparently, there's a guy named Mauro Di Pasquale who's an MD,
Yeah.
very knowledgeable guy. He's a medical doctor. He had been working with the WBG wrestlers, and at the time he might still, I don't know, I haven't spoken to him in years. He had something he called the anabolic diet.
Hmm.
Basically, it involved deleting all carbohydrates from your diet 5 days a week. Dan Duchesne later adopted the same diet, called it the Opus diet or something.
I remember that. Yeah. Hmm.
Same diet. You have no carbohydrates 5 days a week. I mean, none. Then on weekends, you eat as many carbohydrates as you want, right? But here's the deal. On the 5 days that you have no carbohydrates, you make up for it by eating a lot of fat. Apparently, what Mike Quinn told me was eating all that fat made him fat as a pig, in his own words.
Right.
That diet did not work for me at all, Jerry. It fucked me up, he said. He went back to his usual diet. As you said, he was in much better shape later on. It's a funny story. I mean, it wasn't Mauro Di Pasquale's fault, but because the truth is that diet did work. In fact, in Dan Duchesne's Body Opus, I think he called it, in his book, Duchesne mentioned that that diet was the only way for most bodybuilders to reach a 5% body fat level.
Oh, really? Huh.
All the diet would do it, according to Duchesne. In fact,
I think what they did with the WBF was they had problems with Hulk Hogan and the drug use, and the federal government was making them testify and stuff, and so that was all coming down on the wrestling organization. So because Vince McMahon also owned the bodybuilding thing, he said, "Hey guys, we're doing drug testing. You got to get off the steroids." And I think they had like 6 weeks to get off it.
That's why he brought in Mauro Di Pasquale.
Yeah, because he thought that would be anabolic and would keep their muscle.
Not only that, but Mauro was going to conduct the drug testing.
Oh, okay.
About that stuff. And the thing about that testimony you're talking about, Hulk Hogan, to spare himself from any problems, turned in all the other wrestlers.
Oh, okay.
Even the names. And he even mentioned Vince McMahon. He was using steroids himself.
Yeah. I remember that. Yeah.
And all the wrestlers, never forgot that because they thought he was their friend.
Yeah. Yeah, so I think what happened at this Night of the Champions, from what I remember, was D'Amelio was promoting it, and he always used to like do theatrical stuff and stuff. So he thought it'd be a good idea, since all these WBF bodybuilders were coming back to the IFBB, he was going to have a graveyard, right? And he had the headstones of all the guys that were in the WBF like they were dead, and now they're coming back.
I still remember that. Yeah. In fact,
Did he have them like come out of a grave or something?
I don't remember if he did, but that set was, he had a partner named Charles something or other. I can't remember.
Charles Blake.
Charles Blake.
Yeah.
He's the one that designed that. He was the guy who did all
Oh, yeah, that's right. Yeah.
And I remember looking at that. I was in the, right under the stage there. I covered that show. And I'm thinking, gee, this is sure as poor taste. I mean, that's like
Yeah.
really rubbing the wounds. You know what I mean? I mean, why do something like this? You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
Yeah.
And just move on. I mean, the WBG's dead. Just forget
Yeah.
about it.
Yeah.
I didn't like that. In fact, when I wrote the contest article, I even mentioned it. I said I thought it was completely unnecessary and stupid.
From what I remember, from what I read, I wasn't there, but I remember that I read that Mike Quinn, when they got to him, when they introduced him, he smashed his gravestone.
When he came out on stage?
Yeah, I don't know what they were supposed to do, just pose next to it. He smashed his.
That could be. I don't remember that, but I'm sure knowing Mike, that's
Yeah.
something. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
All right, Jared, well, we can wrap it up there, because we've still got some more shows to talk about when we come back again. So we'll talk about the Olympia, of course, and maybe the Grand Prix shows that followed that. But I mean, we could probably spend an hour just on the Olympia, right?
Oh yeah, yeah.
I'll see if we can get Sean Ray for the next show, and then maybe he can join us and give us his thoughts on the Olympia too.
More interesting to have a guy who actually competed on the show.
Yeah, that was on stage there too. And that was also the year that Dorian's pictures came out in Flex. Remember those famous black and white pictures?
Oh my God, yeah, that was sensational.
Yeah, yeah.
They call that the dawn of the monster era.
Right, right.
Started the whole thing with the monstrous physiques.
Yeah.
But looking at those photos taken by this English guy, friend of Peter McGuff, I can't remember his name.
Was it Kevin Horton?
Horton, exactly. He took
Yeah.
those shots. And I remember looking at the when he did a back shot during, I remember looking at his calves.
Yeah,
I've never seen calves that big on a bodybuilder.
I know.
Toledo. I mean, Dorian, in a recent interview, he said his calves were 22 inches or something like that. And normally I go, oh, come on, get out of here,
I
22.
believe it. Yeah,
With him, I believe it.
I know. They were gigantic. Yeah, they didn't look human.
They didn't look human. They were cut. They had striations.
Yeah.
Holy, wow. He really was a monster.
Yeah. And I want to mention your newsletter, Applied Metabolics, only $10 a month. And it's a huge newsletter that comes out every month. So anybody who's interested in supporting Jerry, just we'll have the link below so you can go to it directly, but it's appliedmetabolics.com.
I have a lot of stuff in there that would interest any type of bodybuilder or fitness competitor, how to prepare, all the little tricks, how to lose water.
Yeah.
Plus nutrition, health, it covers everything. I mean, it's like 30 to 45 pages every month.
Wow.
Ads. It's just.
You work on that like every day, Jer?
Every day, yeah. Every
Yeah, I
day.
believe it. If it's that long, you must have to work on it every day to get it out every month.
I have to do the research. I have to write it. I have to edit it. It's all me. It's only one person. Some of these other digital, I was kind of found it humorous. There's a couple of other these like nutrition-oriented digital publications. One of them has 30 people on the staff.
Holy cow.
They also come out, I think, once or twice a month.
Yeah.
It's 3 times more than I do.
Yeah.
I don't understand why. They got 30 people. And the one that has like 15 people. The other one has like, and I'm thinking, wait a minute, it's only me.
Right.
These people got entire staffs, and it's just me.
Right.
And yet, the funny thing is, and this might sound a little conceited, but there's more information in mine than all those people put together. I have more information in my.
Wow.
I guarantee it.
I believe it. All right, Joe. Well, thanks for joining me again for the show, and we'll meet again, and we'll discuss the '93 Olympia. So I appreciate you again joining me for reviewing 1993, Joe.
Sure, absolutely. It was always fun to talk to you, John, and look forward to the next one.
All right. Take care, buddy.
Bye.